Hello there, welcome to Mindset Talk with me, your host Jabu Zwane. Mindset Talk again is a show that is based on a framework that I have developed that is called Mindset Solutions Framework, which helps people to understand what are mindsets, how do mindsets form, what is the function of mindsets in our lives, and how can you best create the kind of mindsets that you need for the life that you are trying to live or the life that you want to live. Now, I've been talking a lot about how mindsets are building all the time without us being aware, and we started going into negative mindsets. And today, I want to explore one of very important principles that we use in the Mindset Solutions Framework, which is the principle of function. Now, function is simply defined as an activity or activities that are natural to a thing, an item, or a product, or a person. Activities that are natural to a thing, an item, or a product, or a person. Also, it is described as an operation that is perfectly suited for an item. An operation that is perfectly suited for an item, a thing, or product. In other words, the design, this operation is perfectly suited for the design of this item. Now, what is important to understand is that anything that has function has an intended or an outcome. It aims to achieve something. If you think about it, for example, a car has a whole range of activities that activate first before the car can move. First, you've got the key, put the key in the ignition, you turn the car. As you turn the car, a whole network of electrical activity takes place, and then the engine revs and a few other things happens there. And then when you put your foot on the clutch and you put it in gear and on the accelerator and you let go, the car begins to move. All right, the car begins to move, and then the intended action was actually for the car to move. But for that to happen, there were a whole host of activities that took place, and these activities were natural to the design of the vehicle. Now, if you think about the mind is similar as well. Now, the mind has a function. The mind helps us to, first of all, is a faculty of thought. So when thoughts come into our mind, as I've said before, they are primarily arranged in different categories. And these categories follow a particular structure, and these structures and these structures then follow a process, and this process then bring us to an outcome. So every single mindset has a particular outcome. So when you think about negative mindsets, the intended outcome is negativity. And I'm going to go back to that a little bit. Now, what happens is this. With the principle of function, there are four important performance components, which I want to briefly go through them. The first one being ability. Ability is all the actual actions that an item can do. For example, as a human being, natural to us is that we can speak. Natural to us is that we can hear, we can walk, we can do all of these things. And all of these activities, these are our abilities. We are able to speak, to see, to hear, to walk, to do all of these things. So, ability is what can I do. Number two, capacity. Capacity of how much of what I can do can I do. If you think about a vehicle. If it's a towing vehicle, how much can it tow? How much, if it's a bakkie, how much can it carry? What's the load? 3 tons, 4 tons, 5 tons. If it's a bottle, how many liters can it carry? Capacity. 3, competency. How well of what it can do can be able to do. If I'm speaking, how well can I be able to speak? If I'm running, how well can I run? And then lastly is fitness. And fitness speaks then to the energy that you exert into whatever you're doing. The energy, the endurance, the agility, your ability to be flexible, to move around. Okay, now let's move on. All of those 4 components working together at their maximum operation determines your ability. So, for example, if I'm very fit, my potential to do to be fast is higher. If I'm very well exercised in what I'm doing, my competency in running is also very good. All right. So if I can run very well and I'm also very fit, then my potential to run at a particular rate is very, very high. Similarly, in terms of thinking, that is also the same thing. Similarly, also in terms of mindsets, that is also the same thing. Your very well developed mindsets, they are able to achieve the outcomes that they set out to achieve better than poorly developed mindsets. With the principle of function, there's one important component or element of it, which is called the process. Now, anything that functions follows, operational laws. Operational laws determine the processes that are going to be followed by the various activities in the function of a thing to bring to that outcome. All right. So when you think about getting up to go and eat, first of all, it begins in your mind. Your mind communicates to your brain. And your brain communicates to the rest of your body. And then your body then moves and sets the whole thing in motion. And as you're walking, your eyes are looking around to see if there are any obstacles along the way to get you to the place that you're trying to get. And until you get to that fridge and you get that food out. A whole bunch of activities, operational laws that are dictating what is the process. Operational laws dictating what is the process, and the process that needs to be followed in line with the design and with the function of a thing. All right? That's important for us to understand that, because negative mindsets, let's quickly think about the mindset, for example, of unforgiveness. Now, unforgiveness in itself is something it's a learned behavior, or it's a behavior that comes when something bad has happened to us and we're trying to protect ourselves, or we are perceiving that some harm has happened to us. All right. Now, naturally speaking, when we're not born as unforgiving beings, but we learn the behavior of unforgiveness. If you look at a child, children are not unforgiving. Children forget very quickly. Children understand, much better than adults. Actually, the fact that sometimes pain does happen, and sometimes pain happens outside of your control, but there is benefit, or rather they function better though if they can maybe able to let go of what has happened and continue with the relationship with the father. So the father or the mother smacks them, they feel hurt, and 5-10 minutes later they come back and they're hugging the mother's leg again, and everything just goes on like that. But you learn as you grow older, and as we observe what other people are doing, we start hearing things and we start realizing that actually when certain bad things happen to us, especially if they're very, very traumatic, caused by other people, we lose that sense of control. We lose our sense of worth, especially if what has happened to us has been very embarrassing and very demeaning. And unforgiveness is one of those ways that we are able to gain back our control, by being able to close ourselves off and not opening ourselves up to, once again, continuing the relationship, especially in situations where, for example, there really is reason to forgive, especially in cases where, for example, a person really committed what they did in the process of because of their humanity, because of their limitations in them being a human being, rather than actually there being a malicious intent. But because of the environment that we live, or maybe what a person has gone through, or what they've seen others do, some people can actually think of forgiveness as a strength and actually be proud that they will not forgive a person. And the reason why that is the case is because they realize that forgiveness is a way of gaining back your control, is the way of being able to protect yourself, is the way of being able to, show the other person that they do not have as much control as what they think they do, or what they fear that they may have, the person that has offended them may have on them. So then choose not to hold on to the anger. And unforgiveness in itself has a particular mindset. What happens is that when you have a mindset of unforgiveness, you start to note many small things which are wrong, in certain instances. Because when you have gone through a traumatic event or something that hurt you, you develop defenses. And so one of the consequences, or one of the behaviors that you'd see with somebody that has been hurt, is that they tend to be very sensitive to anything that possibly may present harm. And so they become defensive, they become suspicious of small activities, and they come to conclusions about certain activities and certain things without necessarily going through the due process of understanding why sometimes people do things the way they do. And they tend to then carry or give more weight to the emotion that they're feeling of pain, the emotion that they're feeling of being undermined, the grief, and the fear of being hurt again tends to carry a lot more influence in processing events that take place around them, events that take place with the people that they even care about, and they have this defensive way of doing things. Anyway, I don't really want to talk so much about forgiveness, but I just thought about it this morning. But what I just wanted to say is that if you think about negative mindsets that are very well developed, they become very dominant in the structure or in the influence of our, in the spectrum of our thinking. And dominant mindsets, if you think simply by the simple 4 tiers of the law, the small claims court, the magistrates court, the five actually, High Court, the Supreme Court, and of course the Constitutional Court. Strong, developed mindsets become like the Constitutional Court. So anything that you're trying to do that is new, that is not very well developed, will always create a conflict between the new thing you're trying to develop, that you're trying to introduce into your life. If you're trying to introduce a lifestyle of, being happy, a lifestyle of being healthy, of being, maybe you're trying to change some of your behavioral patterns of carelessness and all of that, or not spending money well. You're trying to develop a new relationship with money. The old, poor, very well developed mindsets will conflict with whatever you're trying to do, because every single mindset, as I've said, it has an intended outcome. It has operational laws which dictate how thinking goes. All right. So if you've got a very strong, well developed negative mindset which contradicts or which will conflict with what you're trying to achieve anew, the old, strong, dominant mindset will serve as the Constitutional Court. So at the end of the day, every attempt that you try to do, it'll go through those various levels of conflict. The small claims court, you win. Magistrate court, you win. High Court, you win. Supreme Court, you begin to realize that you might actually lose here. So you start to get into reality that this is a real battle. And Constitutional Court, the dominant mindset overrides everything, and it wins, and it achieves what it has set out to achieve. And so the only way then to be able to overcome that negative mindset, or to be able to become victorious in what you're trying to do anew in your life, to change your life for the better, is that you will have to develop that mindset. You'll have to develop strong mindsets around that. We haven't really gone into how to develop strong mindsets. I've been just setting up a scene on negative mindsets and what their role is in our lives and how they can control our lives. And today we're talking about that function. Function has operational laws which determine the processes that need to be followed in order to achieve the outcome that has been, the outcome that for which the item was designed for. All right, the outcome for which the item was designed for. So mindsets are like that. Mindsets, if you think about mindsets, therefore, then if you think about them as different products, they build, they follow operational laws, they design, they dictate processes that are going to be followed to be able to achieve whatever it is that the mindset that has been developed has set out to achieve that outcome. Negative mindsets want negative outcomes. And so they'll always conflict with positive mindsets which want positive outcomes. If whatever it is that you're embarking on is not strong enough, more than likely it is going to conflict with the old negative mindsets that you're trying to get rid of. And the only way to get rid of that is that you're going to really have to be deliberate in building that. At some point, we'll be able to talk about that. But I wanted you to think about that this morning. And, this topic of mindsets is so rich and so deep and so wide, and there's so much that can be said about it. But one chunk at a time, and this is the chunk for today. Once again, my name is Jabu Zwane from Mindset Talk. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have had great value in what I shared with you this morning, and have a blessed day.